Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Ruby, for having us. And it is a fun topic. And I think as we put our consumer hats on, we all can empathize with having better client and customer service out there with our favorite brands. So it's a fun topic.
Oh, yeah. And, so I wanted to talk a lot about like client engagement and that modern consumer client. And I think a lot of times attorneys sort of lose touch with the fact that we are a professional service industry and and that we, the importance of the client experience and customer service. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you got into this space? I hear you used to work in the nonprofit sphere.
Yeah. So I'm an accidental marketer, mechanical engineer by education. So that's definitely how I'm wired. So if any of your audience is doing DIY stuff, I love that in my own personal life, making things run. But yeah, 18 years with a company that built software specifically for nonprofits, fundraising software, maybe K through 12, higher ed schools. We helped with registration, application admissions type software. If you've ever done sort of a 5K friends asking friends type thing, we were at a root of a lot of that. So it was B2B business, but ultimately where we showed our value was what we call B2B2C, business to business to client or constituent in the case of the nonprofit. So yeah, I got to, sort of figure out a lot of what the nonprofits are trying to solve for is ultimately to engage with that end user, an everyday person, and try to get them on board with an experience. And so it transcends just about every other industry. And we did a lot with payments, as you can imagine. So making sure at checkout that people are happy ultimately determines whether or not you're going to get that gift. And I think it can translate to law firms as well, right? If they're happy and they're being satisfied through the process, then they're going to be much easier to manage as you go through that. And that's the formula, right? Getting them to be happy, making it scalable, and ultimately reaping the business benefits, because we all know that happy clients either come back and work with you again, or they tell all of their friends and family. And those are the folks that become your next happy customers.
Yeah, that's right. So as we were preparing, in my ignorance, I saw the CX and I was thinking like cross-examination debate from like high school or something. I was like, what are we talking about? And then you explained to me that means client experience. And there's this whole,
Exactly. Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit more about like this is a really big deal in other industries, and now we're sort of like really bringing it home into the legal sphere.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to segue it for the audience out there in the legal space, because it's not new. CX, so you'll see a lot with Case Status talking about, we're actually just about to launch a CX report, which is looking at, how the clients interact with the law firm, and do kind of an academic study to better understand that. But and we're also having a summit in the fall on the same idea. So CX, probably more generically customer experience, is a well-established industry out there, probably billions of dollars of economic focus on it. So every other industry is living and breathing this. Disney, I think, I mentioned before, but all of the hotel brands and everything, they study that client experience, that customer experience, and it's data driven. It's not sort of happenstance. So they have metrics at every step along the journey to give them insights into how you're doing with that experience, so that they can measure it and so that they can impact it. Because as with a lot of businesses, when you get into hospitality as the example, return customers are the goal. Law firms, maybe not as much, but again, word of mouth is a big thing. So if you look for customer experience CX, you'll see it out there. If you Google search it, if you chat GPT it, you'll get a lot of information, and you'll see decades not only of practice, but of research that has gone into this idea. Net promoter score is one thing that we talk about a lot, which is measuring sort of overall temperature of that individual and the aggregate of all of the individuals that work with your brand. And net promoter score has been around since 2008-ish. So you're talking 2 decades of in practice, and has become sort of the measuring stick on many levels. So we got a little bit of catch up to do in the legal space, but that's the cool thing, is if you start focusing on this, you get a competitive advantage, because as an industry, we're lagging behind, but that can be our competitive advantage.
Well, because then we can maybe like leapfrog ahead of the other industries using the technology we have and learning from all of their mistakes too.
Yeah, no, that's I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, and I love learning from my older siblings' mistakes. I think that's a great way to look at it. It's been refined. It's been proven, and I think the point is just to put it into practice. So, client happiness. It's kind of an emotional thing, so it's hard to put a number on that, but there are ways to do it. And again, Case Status is trying to do that, but your listeners can go out there and start doing it today. One of the things that I notice in the legal tech space is only about half of folks will ask a client how they're doing in the experience, and so that means 50% aren't ever asking. Sort of like the ostrich with the head in the sand, kind of don't want to know what they're going to say, maybe. But the other half ask at the end, and I always say that the end's too late. You can't make a change at the end. If I go to a restaurant and the martini's bad and the dinner's late and cold, and then the manager shows up right before the check and says, "Hey, how was it?" I'm sort of like, well, what difference does it make? I'm never coming back. And I'm going to tell everybody, right? So the idea of keeping a pulse on things throughout, all of your listeners should take that into consideration and try to operationalize the question and finding out sort of where people stand proactively and have a playbook to react to it. That is a philosophical number one, and I think a lot of your folks out there do take that to heart. There's a lot of good intentions out there, but you do have to put rigor around it.
So for those who aren't listening, they don't know what net promoter score, like it's basically sort of like you ask the client throughout the in relationship or through the life cycle, how likely would you recommend or how are you doing? And then like the higher on the number of like, let's say it's 1 to 10 and there are 7 to 10, then maybe you'll be like, oh, well, would you like to do a review? That's great. Or maybe just interview them and ask them what you did right. And then if they're like a lower number, then you want to pick up the phone, call them, reach them, find out how you can fix it. Because to your point, yeah, like if you only ask at the end, I mean, what are you going to do? Like whatever you learned from that, you're probably just going to, if you listen and you implement and make changes, you're only going to affect new clients and they might not come back to you. Yeah.
And look, at the end, you can still make a difference. But yeah, it is a very simple question. It doesn't always apply, but it's basically, would you recommend our law firm to your friends and family? 0 to 10 scale is the scale. So really, it's 2 components. It's if I'm the law firm and you're the client, it's the 0 to 10 rating of right now at this point, T equals time in our experience. How are you doing? What's your temperature? Are you a 10? You're out, you love it, you're very happy. Are you a 0, right? You're a detractor. So anything 6 or below is considered a detractor. Anything 7 or 8 is considered a passive, right? They can kind of go either way. And a 9 and 10 is the more likely to be a promoter. So the individual score with Ruby is the first thing you want to know, right? Because that tactically gives you the ability to manage that relationship one-on-one. Net promoter score then takes all of your aggregate, all of your relationships with all the Rubies out there, and basically gives you a law firm health score at that moment in time. And the beauty of that is it can help you track to a better version of your firm over time, right? Net promoter score. So our industry average, so it's actually a negative 100 to positive 100 scoring system, because you take all of your percentage of 9s and 10s and you subtract all of your percentages of 6 and below. So it's a percentage minus a percentage, which is really a unitless number. And all the 7s and 8s are ignored. But ultimately, you can have a negative 100 or a positive 100 or anything in between. The law, the legal tech space or the legal space is in the 30s. It toggles between 20 and 40. So it's not bad. It's considered fair in the industry.
Hmm.
Um, but excellent Amazon level in this day and age is considered, in the 65-70 range.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that's very hard to attain, right? You got a lot
Yeah.
more promoters out there. But yeah, that's the sort of, how do you take an emotion and put a number on it and then manage against it at the individual relationship and then at the aggregate. But net promoter score, again, 2 decades long. It's well thought out. Some very smart people at, Bain Consulting, and then
Yeah.
Harvard, refined it, and all the big businesses use it. So it's something that we can easily put into place with our current communication systems. Ask how it's going, have it regular, teach staff how to do it, and it'll give your team insights.
And I put a section of that in my latest book, Power Up Your Practice. So that's why I remember. And yeah, I remember Spain. I think somebody from there like invented or something. But
Yeah, they probably trademark and making bank every time we talk about it.
but from a practical side, because I started my firm in '09, so like around the time that was created. Like I think a lot of law firms only ask for a review or ask like how things are at the end. Like I don't know why. I don't know the why behind it. Like I think we sort of felt like, well, we're not done if we ask you just how the consult went or something
Yeah,
like that. But like I really think like how did the consult and the initial relationship go? How did the onboarding go? Because there's a lot of little things that can happen from the contract
absolutely.
to payment to like getting assigned to an assistant and whatever somewhere in along the way and then at the end. And we used to only ask for a review and it felt like that was our request, like our checking in pulse type of thing at the end. And then I realized that's way too late, especially in immigration in my field where some things take, I mean, sometimes it takes 4 or 6 years for us to finish something.
Yeah,
It's
and
not our fault.
you have very little control over the
Right.
bureaucracy of the USCIS. Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think, the point you're making, I totally agree, which is even before they onboard, they've gone through an intake process, as we would call it, but it's a
Yeah.
it's a buying, hiring experience. And so they may have shopped and you may have won because you had the best experience. They might leave you a good review about that. They may leave you a good
Mhm.
review about onboarding. They may leave a good review about how diligent and easy it was to get your list of documents and get it over to you, or how you explain the process. So yeah, there are a lot of folks who are hesitant, and that's fine to ask it, right. The idea of tracking reviews is twofold. One, you can affect the operation of your internal business, right? Get a lot more people happy in the process. But to your point, where we turn that into recurring customers is by getting them to review so that the next phase of intake is impacted, right? Because that's how the hiring decision is influenced via these online reviews. So knowing that you have nines and tens tells you who you should ask, because
Mhm.
you know sort of where they're going to land beforehand. And so that's the currency for the law firm going into it. But you're right, you can, and we have several cases that we cite on the case status side where we can see the metadata of when it happens, and
Mhm.
reviews and 5-star Google reviews do happen early in the process. You don't want to ask too frequently. If you ask
Mhm.
every week, or you ask, it's really once every month or two, kind of when big
Mhm.
milestones are hit. But yeah, early is fine, and it's up to your team to figure out whether or not you want to ask for a review at that point. But you should certainly know where the head is at of your client and how they're tracking with that experience.
Yeah. And I also think about it from a perspective of like, what's their outlet to communicate their how things are going. Like if you don't provide an opportunity, it's almost like I liken it to the ombudsman when I deal with USCIS, which I think they got rid of it recently. But anyway, it was a place where you were supposed to be able to complain or have a squeaky wheel to
Right.
get things back on track. And if there's sometimes when a client was like, I tried calling or I tried this or I tried that. I'm like, well, really? Okay, maybe you did. Okay, I'll believe you. But like, where is the avenue for them to sort of like voice their concern? Because if they don't feel like there's an outlet, in my opinion, then I think they're only going to think like there's just the place to write bad reviews or something, or like a place to
Yeah.
write, the extreme of that. Like if they don't know, because I'm like, there's the supervisor of the assistant, there's you can get on my calendar, like there's there's an office manager. Like we have a whole unit, but maybe they don't know that. And so I think like checking in and how getting a pulse is like a good opportunity to sort of feel like they can be heard and they can voice, but that they know who to talk to in a way.
Right.
Like they know how to bring where to bring their story to their voice.
Well, and I think that's the scary part for a lot of your listeners out there is they can open a Pandora's box
Yeah,
of
that's why we're afraid
questions.
to
And
do it generally.
I get it. Look, and I get it. And that's part of the formula of
Yeah.
having um the automation of information. Because again,
Mhm.
part of the thing you may want to do before that is really look at that journey, right?
Mhm.
And being as because it's all about trust and expectations. So when somebody on boards, they've hired you because they have the belief that you're going to get them the best outcome for their case. And so as soon as they sign, everything is that buyer's remorse is always right there saying, do I feel like I'm
Yeah.
getting all the information? Do I know where I am today, where I'm going tomorrow? Like, or when you go in a black hole, that's when the bad stuff happens. So yeah, there is that part of continually reminding them you're on the green path, right? It's like that fidelity commercial and you're tracking well. And that's hard to scale. So look, I get it. I get why we try to do that. But if our orthopedic surgeon didn't do that and we were in the hospital room, if our cardiothoracic surgeon didn't do that,
Mhm.
right? Our healthcare metaphor is really there. We can all appreciate being a patient and having a really good, surgeon. But if they got a God complex and they're a complete, a-hole at the
Mhm.
bedside manner, right? It affects how we feel about that experience, even though they may be saving our life. And that's, again, impactful on many ways. So yes, you do kind of have to think through the journey and how you can more proactively set those expectations and have easy resources that kind of because that's what 90% of the stuff that they're going to come to you is just it, Ruby, right? You live it every
Yeah.
day, the experience, but they don't. And so you just got to kind of continue to point them to the map.
Are you finding yourself overwhelmed with handling phone calls and spending endless hours on consultations that just don't qualify? Well, let me introduce you to Staffy Live, your ultimate solution for 24/7 live receptionist and intake services tailored specifically for law firms. Now, picture this: empathetic, truly bilingual specialists who understand the intricacies of client care and are experts at asking all the right questions to qualifying callers efficiently. Now that with Staffy Live, you'll feel like you have a trusted partner by your side, ensuring only qualified consultations make it on your calendar and providing valuable follow-ups when needed. As someone who's been using Staffy Live for my own law firm, I couldn't be happier. And I guess what Staffy Live is now offering a generous 15-day free trial with no strings attached. You can head over to staffy.cc. That's stafi.cc and click Get Started. And don't forget to use the code RUBY, RUBY. Your future self will thank you. Yeah. And I think another thing is just the consistency between what the salesperson says. And, maybe you don't use the word sales, but like the person who answers the phone, schedules a consult, and probably the attorney that does the consult. What they're managing expectations. What do they promise? And then what happens when you actually hire? Like I
Yeah.
think back to a story when the salesperson sold me the world, and then what I got was not what I was sold, and then that gap just never went away. I was upset the whole year
Yeah.
that I had that lease, that executive suite lease, and I'm like, "Rrr." And so I think about that, and that's why like I talk about how like sometimes it's really good to just get out of the office and go interact with the world. Like usually on vacations, I see things because I'm like observing, and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea, and I think about um, just that consistency. And I talk a lot about like to my students and other people, whoever listens to me, like, the franchises. Why do the people like that? Because they know what they know in
Yeah.
theory what they're supposed to expect. And so when they go to like a mom and pop law firm and they don't know, they're just taking a lot of it from either word of mouth, reviews, and the vibe they get. Sometimes they tell me that like I watched a video of you and I was like, I felt good about it, or the consult or something like that. But
Yeah. No, I think the franchise is a great point to bring up, right? The law firms that really do well with it, the intellectual property they've created is a predictable journey that all staff members understand and can, sort of build that expectation and meet that expectation wrong. Because we're all organizations. We're not just, even though we might be a solo attorney shop, we still have staff, and we need that staff to understand how We want them to represent us in that entire experience. As we get bigger, that's harder and harder to do. So you have to have, a way for people to tap in and buy into that, and so I think you're right. You got to get out and market and kind of understand what they need, but you also have to have the ability to build the rigor in the organization so that time and time again, they can have that same experience, the good one over and over again. So those are little nuances that are tough, but ultimately, it comes back to that 5-star review, which again, the review is one thing, but the sustainability of bringing in your next set of clients is what makes us a going concern in a law firm practice, that makes us have a long time horizon and help more people, right? So it's a good equation, and it proves well, but it's got a lot of subtleties to it for sure.
So, the terms client engagement and client experience, how would you define those concepts and how essential they are in the modern law firm?
Yeah, I would take a step back just to kind of, I'll give you a little bit of Paul philosophical of coming into legal tech several years back, which is it's we've got a lot of really good technology helping law firms be lawyers and do what I call the back office work.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people have studied. A lot of these companies have come out of law firms, which is notable, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I've got this process. Nobody does this. I'm going to build it from the ground up. Oh, it works for me. I'm going to sell it now, right? You can
Yeah.
look at a lot of case management and practice management systems that went through that same genesis, some variation thereof. So in doing that, they got to a point where they were sort of like coming to the same conclusion that everybody, which is phone calls, emails, text, it's not kind of getting the job done. Let's build them a portal. And so portals kind of are the first generation from several years ago of trying to solve this. What I would give a dig on it was good intention, and it got a little bit of a head start, but the portal kind of fell lackluster because it was built by people who understood lawyers and didn't understand consumers. And so while consumers are moving into the app direction and constantly being on their mobile device, just not looking to a URL, not looking to log in, we had providers building portals where you had to go to a URL and you had to log in and you had to remember the password, and we
Mhm.
still needed email, and we still needed SMS text, which are both, all the bars are saying not secure, not secure. You need to move to something else, right?
Mm.
So portals were kind of the predecessor of what I would call client communications, client engagement. So the idea of engagement and experience, and if you look at other platforms, so go look at a company called Qualtrics or Medallia. If you're a Fortune 500 company and you want to monetize happy customers, you
Mhm.
hire a Qualtrics and a Medallia. And what they do is they actually have what Qualtrics calls it an experience management platform. So it's not a CRM, it's not a case management, but it's experience management. So people invest millions of dollars into these types of investments, bigger businesses,
Mm.
to ultimately just manage that experience. So that's where communications have broadly kind of go. So our goal at Case Status, for example, is to get people off of old communication methods, because that's sort of the challenge of the law firm. Phone invented in the 1800s, email, right? Text, 80s, 90s, even fax is kind of out there. We have video conferencing now. Every time we add a communication method, I ask your listeners, is it coming from your case management? Probably not. Is it maybe integrated? Maybe. And did we sunset an old version? No. So we just keep adding new stuff. So when the portals came out, we just added another thing, right? And we're like, and so we're constantly giving this smorgasbord of choices to our clients, saying, which one do you want? And our staff, meanwhile, are like, oh, I can't keep up with it all because it's not in my case
Yeah.
management, which is my single source of truth. It's all over the place. I'm losing
Yeah.
my brain, right? So it's a Pareto principle. You got to get 80% of your law firm onto one channel that comes back in your case management. That's the
Mm.
hardest part of client experience, client engagement. But that's where we focused on this idea. And that's when you look at the other industries. We're not in the business of CRM or of case management in this case, right? It is the idea of, no, I want to plug into the single source of truth, but I want to interface with your important client and bring all that information and metadata back. So it's not just about, so it started with communications and consolidation there. But then you get into engagement, which is moving away from just communications. Right now, we're taking our human relationship to the next level. I'm not just transactional. I'm not interacting with you, Ruby. We're actually stronger and stronger. We're engaging on it. to true experience where now you're delighted, right? And that's where the evolution is every point along the way. That is sort of mapped out and scientifically designed for that overall experience. So that's why you see the evolution. So again, it's we acknowledge that it comes from communication portals and those ideas, but when we talk about engagement and experience, that's what we're going for, is that immersive and truly making the client feel like they're the only customer that you have. That's when you have established an experience, as a law firm or any business.
So that's what Amazon does. It makes us feel like we're the only.
Yeah, it and you can tell, right? They're stopping at every house on the way to you. You feel that way, right? Uber, same thing. I mean, when I order the Uber, I immediately see where it is. It's heading to me. I don't need to call them. They don't need to call me. I watch yeah.
One of the things I've always looked at it was, what do a lot of them have in common? Like the Domino's pizza tracker to Uber to Netflix to Amazon. You almost never talk to a human. Like they communicate, they overtly communicate what's going on, so you don't have to ask anybody. And that's awesome, because that's really what clients want to know is like, well, what's going on? Who's doing what? Has it been
that
fun?
is
What's it gonna be? How long is it going to take? What do I do next? What do I do with my life? And
don't make me talk to a human. But to your point earlier, when you want to talk to the human, you want a human experience. So yes, you want all of that. You want all of that quickly. But I can think of several instances where you're like, you know what? It's broken. Something's not working. I need an answer. And only those that can actually take the message or take the call, and it's built in, right? I don't want to leave Amazon to say, hey, Amazon, this is messed up. Got to fix it. Fix it now. I want to be in my Amazon app and say it. I don't want to go to an 800 number. I don't want to go to an email address, right? That's where Amazon and Uber, right? I do it right there. Push notifications, things like that. So that's where it's hard. Again, we're practicing law, and it's hard to bring all of that. The good news is the technology is coming into the legal tech space. There's a lot of investment taking place and a lot of innovation that's trying to make that happen. I think a lot of it spends time on the intake cycle. So we think about the power of voice and voice communications in large language models and AI. There's so much that we could potentially do to asynchronously more humanly engage with our clients. But a lot of the investment is taking place elsewhere on the marketing and how do I get more leads kind of discussion, where we're focusing a little bit more on no. Well, how can you make it just frictionless for the Ruby Paul client attorney relationship to move that much smoother. And so the good news is that stuff is coming into the space. We like to think that we're leading some of that, but there is some good investment happening elsewhere as well.
So like you're referring to like AI and other like technology.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And so, how is AI transforming the client communication? And I mean, we've seen it with like language, but and I'm also trying to figure out ways in my immigration space with access to justice and being able to help more people and to reduce costs. But what are you seeing and predicting in the legal industry?
So we're already seeing, for instance, translation. So you have Google that's been refining their translation algorithms for years, and we've been able to tap into that model, 141 languages like that. So, and a lot of firms have bilingual staff that communicate with the clients in a given language, Spanish, for instance, but sometimes the overseeing attorney doesn't. And to have every message translated in a thread because of that it's a really cool use case. So translation is one. Another one that we've pioneered is what we call recommended response. So we take all of your website data, all of your templated messages, and all of your past messages, and we develop a voice, we develop content, we develop answers. And so when a message comes in, we've already got a recommended response in your voice with your data answering the question. So we talk about being more human. There's nothing more human than quick response. Response times and net promoter score have a direct corollary together. We've looked at the data. So again, it's one thing to sit at a blank screen and type up an answer. It's another thing to have an answer there, and maybe it's not perfect and you can edit it real quickly. That's a lot faster. You can change the tone, you could do those things. So that's a fun one, right? The large language models have totally given us the ability, and I can tell you, I hate writing long messages, but to be able to edit instead of authoring, but
Right.
we still make the decision. Another one is if you've got all the messaging. So if you can get holistically all of the interactions that Ruby and Paul have had on the case for the last 5 months and all of the metadata underneath it, I can start to do a couple of things. I can summarize all of the relationships. So not just to summarize the case, that's a different part. The case management systems are doing that, right? But I can summarize your bedside manner. So now I don't even have to ask you the net promoter score question. I can predict if you're a 9 or a 10 based on how you speak, the words you use versus what you used to use, and just other things that you're doing. Are you logging in? Are you engaging with your appointments and your documents and your checklists? Like all those things matter to show engagement and experience. And that's why we move away from just communications, because it's now we're getting into the metadata and how the words matter. What did you say? What was the tone of that? And so we can't pick up on that necessarily as humans, but the models can start to compare some of that thing. So you can summarize and you can do predictive sentiment, which is a lot of fun.
Sounds really fancy.
The last one that you'll love if you ever go into an email inbox is, can you imagine, like we go into email inbox, what's the two things you can do? You can do sort of like most recent at the top, or you can do oldest at the top. We can now look at the actual emails and tier them based on urgency. So imagine if you have somebody that's late for an appointment, right? You'd want to see that message up top. That's very different than the message where somebody's like, hey, I look forward to seeing you, at lunch next week, right? That doesn't deserve necessarily a response as fast as the one is, I'm going to miss my interview, and if I do, it'll take 6 months to get the next one scheduled, right? Because of the bureaucracy I'm dealing with. So all of those things, that's the large language models are to me exciting because they take that and they can start to really help us prioritize and work faster. And some of that, nobody wants to do that tedious work of reading.
So we can prioritize which emails I should go to first.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we've got that rolling out. And again, they're not emails; they're system messages, but same idea, right?
Okay.
I don't know why Gmail or Google Mail isn't doing that AI, right? They could simply take all of my messages and say, hey, this one looks pretty urgent. That does exist out there.
I just did a webinar last week with a co-founder from Candle AI that they help draft emails, a system and connect to your case management in your email. And just like even doing that whole webinar made me realize how much time I spend in email and how we need to batch it and prioritize it. But I think we've had a great discussion, but I don't think we really said what is case status for people who don't know what it is, and what does it integrate with if they use some of the other programs that could integrate with.
Yeah. So case status, we're a client engagement platform, which is a new idea in legal tech. A lot of people are starting to say, well, what is that? Is that a portal? And yes, we do consist of a portal. So that is mainly, we have both a browser portal. You can go to a URL and log in, or an app that you can download from Android or Apple. And about 90% of people that choose between those two go to the app. It's kind of what we study with the marketplace. So it's built on this sort of 5-star client experience. It's firm branded, but it ultimately brings all of that back for your staff into your case management. So to your point, right, we integrate with the Litifys, the Filevines, the Assembly Neos, Clio, MyCase, DocketWise. The list goes on. I think we're up to 17 or 18 integrations now. So we have philosophically said, as a client engagement platform, we are not a case management or practice management system. You are studying and getting law stuff done somewhere else, but we need to bring it all back in there. So we have the API integration so that documents, messages, status updates, all of that comes back into your case management. So ideally what we do once we get set up is your staff or you sit in the Assembly Neos of you're still there, but we put an API screen, a picture-in-picture, if you will, into that experience. And you have all those tools. The data syncing behind, but you can see, the translation, you can see the case summary, you can see the recommended response. So AI powered. We're very excited about putting your data work for you, and those use cases that we're talking about. That's what the first 5 years was built on status updates. Where is my case? The Domino's pizza tracker idea, right? Where am I today? Present tense. But the fun thing now is we have all that data because we're getting 80% of people onto the app. We're starting to say what should happen, what will happen. And that predictive future tense of client experience is crazy fun. I mean, I couldn't be more happy to be here
Can you
during this
predict immigration for me? Just kidding.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that part of watching the news thread, I cannot do any predictions there on or on resources. But yes, the idea of your engagement with your clients and how they're doing, we can tell you exactly, and we can tell you where they're upset with the federal government versus you guys, right? We could probably give you some insights.
It's not us, it's them.
That's right. Yeah, you're the only one fighting for them, arguably.
I think sometimes I've felt like, since we appear to be like the persona or the human, visualization, or I don't know, like manifestation of the situation they're working on, they sometimes want to take it out on us, even though we're like just trying to help them and guide them through.
Yeah, I think that's probably, so the mechanical engineer would say that if you were building a high pressure steam system, you always have a relief valve. So you're servicing a very good relief valve for your clients, which is arguably part of the bedside manner. So kudos to you. Everybody I meet at ALA and in the immigration space, they remind me of my old nonprofit. You guys are all altruistic, and I think again servicing the American dream and on so many levels. So it's really cool that you guys get to engage on that level.
Yeah, no, I agree. It takes a special someone to want to go in this field, but I think that you brought a lot of things to think about for a lot of the law firm owners, partners, everyone listening, because like, how do we take that customer service level, that thing, the experience engagement that like Disney, Amazon have, and how do we bring that to the legal journey? What besides what would be like one or two like tips before we have to start closing up? Because this is great. I feel like we've teed up, but we could go on for a long time, because but you live in this space, so give us some more advice and suggestions.
Yeah, the advice is simple. The stuff the 3-part series that I always talk about is engage, measure, and act. So we can do that today. It takes a little bit of thought, but engage means understand where your clients are. We will say, if you ask them, they're going to say phone and email and all this stuff. But the truth is, if you looked at their behavior with other service providers, they're playing around in apps. You can't necessarily build an app overnight, but just kind of understand. Ask them, what's your preference? Is email more like, if you just knew that and you could track that Ruby prefers email over phone or text, then you would do better by Ruby by just having that piece of data on her record, right? So engage them where they expect to be engaged, and kind of set that expectation. The next one is measure. So back to what we talked about before, ask them, even if it's not the Net Promoter Score, just say, hey, are you satisfied with the service I'm providing? Am I meeting expectations that I set, right? Ask those questions, yes or no, binary, you got insights. So you're measuring, you can start to put people in different buckets of, okay, feeling good here, not so sure here, right? And then the last one is act on the data. If you get a low score, have a playbook for you and your staff. Think it through. What should be the response? Just writing it down makes your entire law firm better. Same thing with a 9 or 10. That one's easy. 9 or 10, maybe you do ask for the Google review, right? Always easy on the 9s and 10s. Remember that if they're a 9 and a 10, they still won't leave you a review unless you ask. They're 9 times more likely to leave you a review if you just ask. So you got to ask. So that's part of the act of the 3rd part. So engage, measure, act. If you can put that into play, you're taking the philosophy of case status and putting it to work. So yeah, that's what I would leave your audience with, because that'll make the whole entire sector better if we were all doing that 3-part series.
Well, that's great. Thanks for giving us some practical tips on what to do. And even though it sounds simple, it could take some time. Yeah, it's a lot of work. But you just keep going back into those 3 points and make it happen, and delegate to your team, and keep implementing it.
That's right.
And refining it. Well, let's go to the rapid response questions,
Oh
fun
boy.
fact questions. So, what is your favorite board game?
Oh, favorite board game. We play a lot with the kids, but I'm gonna have to go with Mexican Dominoes. I don't know if you've ever played that, but
No, I
my
haven't.
my
How's
in-laws
it?
have. So it's Mexican train dominoes, I guess is the way. But you kind of have 6 or 7 players, and it kind of comes out, and you got these little choo-choo trains that you set on. I can't explain it, but it's a
Oh,
fun
wow.
game. And when you can have older generation, younger generation, and everybody in between having a good time, then I say it's a win.
Oh, I always love learning a new game. Okay, I hadn't seen that until you told me.
Yeah,
Okay,
check it out. I think it's you probably get it at the Walmart or the toy stores or
yeah.
wherever. Yeah.
Okay, what do you consider your superpower?
Oh, superpower. So I'd just have to go with flying. I'm a private pilot, so I love the
Really?
idea of going in the air. Yeah, and to be able to do it without having to rent an airplane or use fuel, that'd be a pretty awesome superpower.
Wow. Wow. Um, wow. So what is a habit that you think contributes to your success?
Oh, probably tenacity. I mean, I just put a lot of energy. I'm I show up even when it's sometimes hard. I guess the other habit is I step away. So we're in front of the screen, and sometimes when I'm
Mm,
in
yeah.
um, decision, paralysis, or I'm stuck, going for a run, going for a bike ride, getting out of the office, that's when the brain can actually do its thing and solve problems. So part of it is outstanding work ethic, which is a habit I learned. So everybody I think can learn that. And then the other one is stepping away when you're stuck and taking a moment. That's actually good energy to then get to resolution.
Yeah, I agree with that. I try to walk or work out every morning just because I know it makes me a better whatever I do during the day at everything I do.
Yeah.
And then my office is in the cute little 1940s bungalow in Houston Heights area. And so I have like my little gardening. Like before this, I was watering, before the rain came, I was watering my plants. I didn't realize it was going to pour. But I have like a whole bunch of citrus trees, and I
Oh
saw
boy.
my jalapenos were starting to grow, or bell peppers. I don't know. I planted a whole bunch of stuff. So it's I call it my what do I call it? I mean, I know sometimes it's like a victory garden or something,
Right.
but no, this one's more like therapy garden, and I go out there in between.
But I bet your mind
Also,
is all over the place, right? Like it's hard to
yeah,
totally check out, but like I bet you come to, you prioritize things when that happens, right? That moment is
yeah,
probably very
yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
And it's like very grounding to be
Huh.
like with water and like look at the leaves and sort of see how are my plants doing?
Yeah. No, I think I like that.
No. Yeah, I love that too. Okay, and then what's a favorite book or podcast that you wanna share with the world and make sure that their
Oh boy.
that resources
Books.
are
Yeah, I'm kind of a nonfiction, manual do it yourself type book. So I won't take you down that boring route.
No,
But
it's okay, I don't read fiction.
no, I'm gonna go with
No
one of
offense
my
to the fiction reader.
one of my favorite from high school is either Catch 22
Uh-huh.
or Siddhartha. I think that was Herman
Oh,
Hesse, which is a great book about getting out in the garden and sort of being one with um, the surroundings, but
yeah.
having to figure that out over a very long life journey. So I think that's a good one that is an easy read and sort of has stood the test of time.
I read that a long time ago, I have to check. Okay, I guess I
It's
do read some fiction, so but anyway.
Well, and I don't know that yeah, that is fiction, but I think it is based on Buddha, but
Probably
I
goes
could
true
be.
story.
Yeah, I think it might be a true story. Well, no.
I'm going down a rabbit hole of finance books right now, and every once in a while I'll intersperse it with something different, so I break it up. But I'm reading the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the investor one because I know there's like a series, and then I'm actually really enjoying it. And then I read Super Communicators right before this one, just to sort of like break it up because there was too many finance books. But I really enjoyed that. I was telling my podcast assistant, Martina, I was like, I want to start doing some like book reviews instead of interviews, or I could interview people who read the same book and we could talk about the book. But that's my next thing to do with the podcast.
I'd love to be back, but I'm not the good one on the book review. So yeah, I probably if I watch my kids sort of grow up in a YouTube era, and they don't read a lot, unfortunately. But if I had grown up in this era, I'd probably be watching a lot more videos. Yeah,
yeah,
books on tape.
I told my daughter, I said, she's 12. I was like, "You're so smart. Where did you get it? Was it your amazing mother?" She's like, "No, it was TikTok." I was like, "Violet," she's like, "TikTok raised me." I was like, "No, you didn't. No, you didn't. You did not just say that." Like, anyway. And my son is like YouTube. He's playing a video game and he's got YouTube on a different screen at the same time. And I was like, yeah, they're digesting data.
Yeah, it's a different world.
But it's good for us to observe because it's part of the client experience, and we're figuring out how we can create it, like, circling it back to what we're talking about.
Videos are very human. I get to see your face. I get to see your facial expressions, right? There's a lot to that.
And the other thing I've been doing a lot is telling my clients about these videos I've been doing on my YouTube and, webinars, and like sending them to them like, here, let me explain something to you. This is, if you have a question about it. I think they're enjoying that.
It is a great way to, again, all engagement doesn't have to be synchronous, doesn't have to be live. You can do a lot of really human asynchronous, communication and engagement.
And I think that's a really good point for lawyers, because we're all just thinking like time, how long is this going to take? And if I have to have a call or a meeting, or could we, because that's actually how I'm using it. I'm saying, watch this video and then let's talk, and see what your questions are afterwards.
You just did a one-to-many. You did one thing, and now you can service many people. And again, it hits home. So love it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Paul, it's been great. How do people find you and connect to find out more about Case Status?
Yeah, casestatus.com, easy to find. I'm at pbamert@casestatus.com. Reach out anytime. Critique anything that we've talked about, push back. I love a good debate. But yeah, find me or any of the family here. Any of our happy customers, talk to them. Don't talk to me, and they'll tell you how they're using us. But yeah, would love to continue the conversation with folks. Again, this is disruptive. It's not always the easiest thing to do, and we understand that. We want to make sure that we help people and add value. So come knocking on our door if that sounds like something we can help with.
Well, great. Well, we've had a wonderful conversation about the client engagement, client experience, learned a lot more about the science and the why, and just some practical tips on how to approach it if we want to go back to our firms and find a better way to improve that experience. And so thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on Power Up Your Practice. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management Podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and I would love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.